Now I want to move on to something really interesting. If there's anything up Freddie's alley, I think you would agree that this is it. So I'm going to hold this right here so I'm not looking too down, but I really wanted to be able to read this. This is from USA Today, and I should have double checked that, but I think it was USA Today. I'll put the caption if I was wrong. I think it said USA Today. But billionaire Marc Lore outlines how he will build the inclusive utopia desert city Telosa. Marc Lore grew up wanting to be a farmer, revealing the idea of something growing from nothing, all while watching his father unafraid to take chances with ambitious business ventures. This 50-year-old billionaire developed his appetite for taking risks from his father, Peter, and that's the foundation of his childhood, where he wanted to focus on this endeavor, which many experts and pundits are deeming near impossible. Lore is the former president of Walmart's e-commerce and co-founder of Jet.com and Diapers.com. And Diapers.com has a very interesting story with Amazon, but I believe Amazon bought Diapers.com at one point. So Marc Lore has really been around, has seen a lot, has created a lot of success, and now he's attempting to build an inclusive utopian city in the middle of the desert in, I believe, Arizona. He bought 150,000 acres of land, and he's planning on building this. The location is targeted in Appalachia or American West Desert. His plan is to shepherd a reformed version of capitalism and focus on societal inclusion over division. He envisions Telosa having equal access healthcare, excellent schooling, and safe environments for families, regardless of income. Even further, he aims for Telosa to be a diverse place housing various races, genders, sexual orientations, religions, and political affiliations. Now, there's a bunch of people that are going to have a lot of feedback, a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? There's going to be pushback is the word I'm looking for. But I think this is interesting. Depending on how this unfolds, and I'm looking forward to get your opinion on this, there are so many people talking about these great ideas. And just like, and not to simplify this, because I understand it's a major issue, but just like you can Google milk is bad for you and Google milk is good for you, and you're going to have 1,000 dietitians telling you why it's good and 1,000 dietitians telling you why it's bad. The same thing is happening in these major issues in our country, these big dialogues between Medicare for all, when it comes to the environment, when it comes to a twist on capitalism. There's so much debate going on. But at what point in America, with 330 million people and all this red tape and all these government regulations, how are you truly going to appease 330 million people who live all across this country, grew up with all different backgrounds, and that's, I think, why we have a difficult time getting along. There's obviously many reasons, but the one thing that's never mentioned a lot is how big we are. We're trying to convince 330 million people to all think the same on certain things. And then people will reference places like Denmark, Sweden, Netherlands, and places like that. But what they have on their side is, yes, they have different policies, but they're implemented on a smaller scale. I think somewhere like Denmark has 5 million people. To have, like, we have a better chance of like a state implementing something because it makes it feel like some of these states might all get along more than trying to get someone in Alaska, Maine, California, Texas, Florida, and like Idaho to all see the same vision. So the thing I love about Telosa is that this is going to be a real-time, I hate to use the word experiment because I don't want anything to go tragically wrong here, but it's going to allow there to be some real-time data of a new place being built that we can learn from. Are these things working? Are they not working? And this way, they're not going to be a theory where two politicians debate any longer, where we can actually look to Telosa in hopefully 10, 15, 20 years and be able to say, look what they did. This worked, or this didn't work, or here's what we can learn from it. So I'm excited for, again, for the lack of a better word, experiment. I'm excited for this to take place. But how exactly is the city of the future going to be built when it's so risky and complicated? Researchers have long maintained that there's going to be too many financial hurdles to do this. To create an eco city to achieve this utopian ambition is basically going to be limited without profit-driven entrepreneurial planning environment, which is what's going to be really interesting to see. How is he going to raise all of this money? Because he revealed that he has a plan that this is going to cost $400 billion to build this utopian city in the desert. The word Telosa came from the ancient Greek word telos, meaning higher purpose. And he really wants to create a city that is solar powered, that there's autonomous electric vehicles, high-speed public transportation. He wants created by the same company that created Google and Apple's headquarters. Shows 150,000 acres of eco-friendly architecture, including a beacon-esque skyscraper. So that's going to be really, really interesting to see. The same company that created, but that's what's going to be possible, because if you take a place like Los Angeles, there's so many windy streets and everything's a little crazy somewhere like there, where there is going to be autonomous vehicles when the technology gets there. Tesla's already doing it, but if you actually build a city from scratch, you will 100% with the technology we have today, especially in 10 years, be able to have autonomous vehicles, because it'll be built with autonomous vehicles in mind. Back when the roads were built in California or Florida or Connecticut, they weren't building those roads with autonomous vehicles in mind. People weren't building certain aspects of buildings with solar energy in mind. So I think with this technological advancement that we've had in the past 50 years, especially the last 20 years, this is something really exciting for us all to witness and watch, that we do have the technologies now. So what would it look like if we could build a whole new city, but with all these technological advances in mind? I think that's going to be really, really cool. So here's what's really neat, is that the first phase is going to be 50,000 residents, and they're going to be welcomed in this city by, guess what year? 2030. That's like 8 years away. I'm not pursuing this to make money, said Lore. I'm doing this because I know what it can mean for others and the future. If this entire attempt doesn't work, then hopefully there are things to learn from it, and it will inspire others to take their shot. And then here we have, let me skip down just a little bit here. Top-down economic models present complications, but they've been achieved elsewhere. The concept of community-owned land on a large scale is on display in Singapore, where the government owns 90% of the country's land, and the proceeds are reinvested into the country. While there's skepticism, Lore's hope is to provide a blueprint for the future cities. Nothing that so many U.S. cities today have become ingrained in politics, where bridges of trust have been fractured over time. The sole purpose of creating a city in the desert would be so it's owned by the community. Basically, take all the appreciation of the land and give it back to the citizens. Taxes paid will go back to the city's infrastructure, roads, tunnels, and bridges, so everyone would know exactly where their money's going. That to me is huge. Again, it's easier said than done. If this can be implemented in the right way, I would love to know where our taxes go. I would love to know where every part of our $4 trillion that we send in as Americans every year actually goes. And at what point are we voting on where it actually goes? Because if you even think about big companies, or you even think about where you work, there's a lot of waste. So imagine what a country like America is doing when it comes to wasting money as well. But is there a way to scale a city or run a country like America without there being waste, without there being problems, when it's this big and this powerful? That seems to be the question we all continue to debate. Let's see, we can create a city without some early nudging to move into the city. We want to kickstart it in an unconventional way, but we hope that we'll position people to grow the culture. Lore said much of the framework for the first settlers will be sorted out with aid from his team of 50 volunteers and full-timers made up of architects, historians, researchers, economists, creatives, designers, engineers, and climate experts. Once the first phase begins in 2030, Lore said the hope of this model is to let people drive the creation of the city's culture and then accentuate the diversity through respect and an equal value system. How does the city have a soul? Lore said it's not about the buildings or the roads. It's about the values and the city standing for something. We don't know what it is yet, but we want to find out. Lore said Telosa will be intentionally apolitical with its creation and potential launch. We want to involve Democrats and Republicans, people with different opinions, he said. How do we bring people together? It's always in the how. We intend to be transparent as one team with one vision. One approach to zero in on an inclusive culture, Lore said, is by looking at future citizens from more of a psychological lens versus sociological lens, focusing on the nuances of what makes individuals tick versus the semantics of the whole, which I think is very important. And I also think that's important in schools. Again, a lot to manage, a lot of kids, a lot of stuff going on. How do you manage all of this? But I think having nuances when it comes to how we live, how we learn is very important. You can't just have everybody doing all the same thing. We're all unique, we're all different, and if we can somehow highlight our differences and how we can use those to work together is very, very important. One of the things I discovered working with companies was how much trust builds relationships and trust impacts culture, Lore said. Something magical happens when people trust that you're living by a set of values and being honest about it. When I was at thejet.com, the directors made the same salary and that was known. The transparency and fairness meant something. Also very true. Seems like all the television shows where there's 6 lead actors and they all agree at the beginning, no matter what happens, we're all going to get a raise and be equal, seems to work, but they're also doing the same job. So that's a different conversation than obviously people being paid differently depending on what value you're bringing. But if it's in a specific sector, I think having that is very fair. In conjunction with financial buy-in, there will be a practical challenge to address. But Lore said he sees Telosa as an opportunity to test highly researched theories in a way that was not possible otherwise. That's what I was just saying. This is truly a way to test. That's the perfect way to put it. To test highly researched theories in a way that's not possible otherwise. You can truly test out new schooling ideas, new environmental ideas. You can test out just so many different things because it's at a smaller scale. One of the concerns will be sufficient water system in the desert. It will require us to use technology in ways we're not today, so that we can have a city to live off 80% less water per person. That can set up the future we're prepared for when water is scarce. This isn't the first time a utopian city has been attempted by a wealthy person. Bill Gates announced in 2017 that he wanted to build a smart city outside of Phoenix. Millionaire Jeffrey Burns also bought 67,000 acres outside of Nevada for a smart city. But Lore sees his vision as different. I am very open to others' opinions, and I want Telosa to be based on the collective thinking of people in the world. Very, very smart. Lore has plans to step aside more if and when Telosa is off the ground. In the meantime, the childhood dream is creating something out of nothing is closer and is coming to fruition. I don't have all the answers, Lore said, but each day I'm learning. So I think that's also very interesting that billionaires are now investing their money into traveling to space. They're also investing their money in land, trying to build smart cities, and will be building smart cities. So this brings me to all of you. What do you think of this city, Telosa? Would you ever live in Telosa? I think it's interesting. I'm always down for just something new and interesting. I don't know what this will be like in 2030. I don't know where my life would be, but something like this, I would just love to check out. I'd love to go and see what's happening there, what they're doing, and just see what someone could create. I think this is perfect because anytime I watch anything when it comes to political, or I see things that are like being in debates, and I always see people who have loads of money, who have all these resources, and you obviously need to sit and talk, and that's what we do. We sit and talk, but I would love to be able to do something like this, or for someone to round up, instead of just putting out a tweet, putting down a group of people, using that power in that tweet to gather up 50,000 volunteers and go help out local businesses, or go help clean something up, like if there's something like in a town or like a pothole, or there's businesses that need new graphic design, or help them with their website. Like there's a lot of good we can do. And I think we're kind of all stuck right now in this position where there's so many people that's trying to tear down other groups and demonize other groups, rather than just like the Maid did, show inspirational actions that make people want to join you. And I think that's the biggest missing component that no one in politics has really done lately that I've seen, or if ever. I don't know. I can't speak on if ever. I wasn't a political guy very long ago. I'm still not now, but it's just so in our face that you kind of have to be aware of what's going on. It's important to be aware of what's going on. But there's just too much bullying, too much demonizing, too much yelling, instead of people using that negative energy to actually build something or a community that's positive and inspiring and inspires others to join the group. And I think that's what Telosa can do here. So I'm going to keep you all up to date on Telosa because I think this is going to be amazing to watch.